Look at the celestial faces of the Renaissance, the divine light reflecting on the pale skin of historical figures, the perfect, immaculate highlights on royal gowns. That light hides a dark, lethal secret. What history books rarely tell you is that the paint responsible for this absolute perfection was literally poisoning the artists who used it. Today, we are opening the doors to the most famous ateliers of the past. We are leaving boring dates and names behind and looking at the chemistry, the engineering, and the danger of being a master painter. Welcome to the true behind the scenes of art, where beauty came at a high price. Today's protagonist is not a painter, it is a powder, the feared and coveted lead white. For centuries, lead white was the only white paint available to European artists, and it wasn't for lack of trying to find alternatives. It was because no other mixture came close to its opacity and its luminous glow.
Without this paint, the brilliant light in the eyes painted by Rembrandt, or the milk pouring from the jug in Vermeer's works, simply wouldn't exist. Lead was the foundation of almost everything. The canvas primer, the skin tones, the light. But what guaranteed this buttery texture was a heavy, toxic metal. And the preparation of this paint was an industrial, bizarre nightmare involving metal, vinegar, and horse manure. Let's understand the brilliant yet deadly engineering behind the most important color in art history. Forget the ready-made tubes of paint you buy at the stationery store. In the Renaissance, an artist's studio smelled, and it smelled bad. The traditional Dutch process for creating lead white required a strong stomach. First, they took coils of pure metallic lead and placed them inside clay pots. At the bottom of these pots, there was acetic acid, basically a very strong vinegar. And now came the secret ingredient. These pots were stacked and completely buried under tons of decomposing horse manure. Yes, fresh feces. Why? Because the hot manure fermented. It generated a constant heat of about 140 degrees Fahrenheit and released carbon dioxide. For a month, in the dark, a silent chemical reaction took place. When they opened the pots, the alchemical magic was done. The gray metal had been devoured by the vapors of the vinegar and the manure, transforming into thick flakes of a pure white, lead carbonate. But that is where the danger began. This material needed to be scraped and ground into a very fine powder, and this powder floated in the air of the studio. Apprentices and masters inhaled lead daily. They absorbed it through their skin while mixing the paint with linseed oil using their bare hands. The result? A cruel disease called lead poisoning. Sharp pains, terrible cramps, paralysis of the hands, blindness, deep depression, and eventually premature death. Many medical historians believe that the mysterious illnesses of masters like Caravaggio or Goya were in fact slow and silent poisonings by the very material that made them geniuses. Lead white was the light that dragged them into the darkness. By the 19th and 20th centuries, as the devastating effects of lead poisoning became undeniable, lead white was heavily restricted and eventually banned in many countries. Modern chemistry gave us titanium white and zinc white, safe, mass-produced alternatives. But here is the fascinating part. They are not the same. For a small, dedicated group of modern purists and art restorers, titanium white is too cold, too opaque. It lacks the warmth, the translucency, and the quick drying properties of traditional lead white. These modern guardians of art go to extraordinary lengths to safely recreate the old recipes. Wearing hazmat suits and respirators, they grind the toxic powder, keeping the ancestral technique alive. Because to truly understand a masterpiece, sometimes you have to reconstruct not just the image, but the alchemy behind it. The beauty of the past was built on danger, and the glow of lead white will forever remain the deadliest light in art history. But just how deadly was it? To truly understand the body count of this perfect color, we have to look beyond the anonymous apprentices. We have to look at the masters themselves. Saturnism, the clinical name for lead poisoning, doesn't just destroy the body. It attacks the nervous system. It destroys the mind. Consider Michelangelo Caravaggio, known for his explosive temper, his erratic behavior, and his eventual murder charge. Was he simply a violent man? Or was his brain being slowly destroyed by the heavy metals he ground into his paints every single day? Records show Caravaggio was incredibly sloppy, constantly covered in paint, eating without washing his hands. And then there was Francisco Goya. In his later years, Goya suffered from profound deafness, terrifying hallucinations, and a severe change in his art, culminating in his famous, horrifying black paintings. Modern analysis of Goya's bones revealed massive concentrations of lead. The very tool he used to capture reality was distorting his mind, feeding him nightmares. The masters were sacrificing their sanity for their craft. But why didn't they stop? Why endure the stomach cramps, the shakes, the madness? Because the results were unmatched. And to understand why, we need to look at how they actually used it on the canvas. Lead white wasn't just a color. It was a structural element. It dries extremely fast when mixed with oil, acting as a chemical catalyst. Artists used it to create the imprimatura, the foundational layer of the painting. They would cover the entire canvas in a thick coat of lead white, creating a luminous base that reflected light from behind the colored layers. But its true magic was in painting human skin. Lead white has a unique optical property. It is slightly translucent. It's not a flat, dead white like modern wall paint. When mixed with reds and yellows to create flesh tones, the lead white allowed light to penetrate the surface of the paint and bounce back out again. This mimics the exact way light interacts with actual human skin. That is why the women in Rubens' paintings look like they have blood pulsing beneath their pale flesh. And when they needed a pure, blinding highlight, the reflection in a tear or the glint on a pearl earring, they would apply a thick, unmixed drop of pure lead. It would catch the room's light and literally glow. It was optical perfection, achieved through chemical hazard. To truly understand a masterpiece, to truly restore a Caravaggio or a Rembrandt, we must look at the alchemy behind the image. The beauty of the past was built on sacrifice, and the glow of lead white will forever remain the deadliest, most beautiful light in art history.